Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called The Manatee Murders by author John Mills. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Let's talk about The Manatee Murders.
Let's talk about it.
What is this book?
Well, what to say about the Manatee Murders? I don't know where to start because I have a long list of complaints, but I don't want to start off and just go straight into it. It's a strange thing to talk about, and it's really not like any of the previous books we've looked at.
Well, let's talk about first why we chose it.
Well, we chose it, as we said last time, at the end of Hard Target, that we had actually found this book at the same time as we found Hard Target, but we put it off.
Yes.
We put it off for a few different reasons, but really we wanted something that we knew was going to be good because we had been hit hard by the previous books, and I think Apocalypse Deception had left us in a very low place.
That was the low point of the season, yeah.
Yeah, it really was cutting us pretty deep there, so we wanted to find us something with a little bit of energy, something with a little bit of jazz, and Hard Target did that.
Yeah.
It reinvigorated me. Now, what Manatee Murders has done is taken that reinvigoration and tangled it up in a net and then shot its head with a shotgun. That's what it did to my energy. That's what it did. So, what is the Manatee Murders? The Manatee Murders is about Doug Shearer, a Fort Myers resident, just like the author.
Yeah.
We should say that John Mills is a fifth-generation Fort Myers native.
And his background closely resembles that of our lead detective, Doug Shearer.
Yes.
And so this is similar in some ways to a self-insert.
Yeah, it's really borderline on a self-insert. So John Mills is a prosecutor, and there is a little bit of legal stuff in this book, so you can see that come into play, I think, his experience, and where some of the previous books we talk about people not using their experiences, perhaps for the worse of the book. This comes through in a way where he should have done something interesting with it, but the legal stuff that happens in this book is dead-ass boring. It's so fucking, lame and just
so stupid. And I would actually describe this book less as a detective story, which we thought it was going to be, and more of as a courtroom drama.
Yeah, courtroom drama.
A really stupid courtroom drama.
A really stupid courtroom drama. But the thing that I started to realize about this book as I was reading it is this book is another one of these things where it's not really a self-insert, but it's a platform.
Yes.
It's a platform for the author to talk about some of the things that he dislikes about his hometown, and also to talk about some of the things he loves about his hometown.
Not only that, but also his philosophy on relationships.
Oh, yes.
And various other things. It's really just...
It's a political piece, almost. It's a local political piece. And it's funny because you can really see in the places in the book where he really is just ranting about the slow zones where you can't drive your boat fast along the rivers and in the local estuary and things like that, and it pisses him off, and he writes a lot about the slow zones in the book.
Yeah.
And he also writes a lot about some of the stupid legal things and quiff-quaffs between the different people, so you can see that he has some grievances from real life that he's taken and applied into the book, not to the book's benefit.
No, not at all. And so we'll get into what this book essentially is then. It's called The Manatee Murders, and it is about some manatees that are murdered.
Yeah.
In the start of the book, some unnamed fishermen go out on the river and they kill and decapitate a few manatees, 2 adults and a baby manatee.
Yes, and I would like to make something very clear in the beginning. This is the first chapter, it's the opening chapter. It's probably what you will remember most throughout the book is this opening.
Yeah.
And what happens in the opening is you have a silver-haired man and a bald man, and they capture a manatee in a net. They sort of drag it up a little bit, and then they take a shotgun to its head and shoot it right between its soulful little eyes. Now, that is a very important piece to remember because it is in conflict with the entire plot.
Yes.
And we'll get into that a little bit later, but the fact of the matter is, it is a huge plot hole, the way that they kill the manatee, because it goes against the reason as to why they do it.
It goes against the reason to why they're beheaded as well.
Yes.
Because they don't just kill them, they also cut off the heads, and there was a reason they cut off the heads, and it makes no sense why they would shoot it between the eyes if they wanted the head for something.
Yeah. So you have this huge gaping plot hole which leaves you sour because you're like, you really didn't think about this, did you?
Yeah.
You didn't even have the mental fortitude to see how the essence of the story is against itself. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I would say that the reason it's so messy in that regard is because I had the impression that he came up with the reason why they were beheading the manatees, like, at the very end, because that's when he tells you about it, and it makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, and it's really weak, and it's really stupid, but again, this is one of those books where, like, the story in quotation marks, is really just secondhand to what he really wants to talk about, which is
fishing regulations, restrictions on boat speeds.
Yeah, it's really, really inane and boring. And look, if you're from Fort Myers and you're a boater or a fisher or anything like that, this book might have some interesting stuff. But I mean, I'm sure you could make a more interesting fishing story than this.
Yeah.
Like, the book is not supposed to be about him going out and fishing, but he does it nearly every second chapter.
Yeah. He does almost no detective work.
Yeah, he really doesn't. And really simple detective work.
So the first reason that you're given for why the manatees might be a problem for someone is that they swim in the waters where fishermen like to drive their boats at high speeds, and sometimes the manatees get hit. And so there's an activism group called Save Our Sea Cows, SOS, which was started to put some strict regulations on boat speeds in the rivers. And at the same time, another activism group, also called SOS, which is Save Our Speed, is started to counter Save Our Sea Cows. So at the start, you have two opposing activist groups, both named SOS, because that's not confusing.
Yeah.
And they are in conflict with each other because one cares about the manatees and the other one just cares about boat speeds. That's like the whole conflict of the book, essentially, and that's where most of the sort of political commentary comes through.
Yeah. So, in chapter 1, we have this prologue where these nameless characters shoot this manatee in the head, and it has one of my favorite lines, which I'll just quickly quote because it's too good to leave out of this thing before we continue. When they are hauling up this manatee, the silver-haired man goes, "I wish all those manatee lovers could see how their beloved manatee got trapped in our net because of the radio buoy they attached to monitor her movements." And it's like, what are you, like, what sort of sinister man are you that you're like, those fucking manatee lovers, like, you've got such a hatred for them, like, what?
It's so stupid. Yeah, so it's giving you the idea that he's one of these Save Our Speed guys, and he hates those damn manatees because they make it difficult for us to ride our boats through the river real fast, you know?
Yeah.
Those goddamn manatee lovers. It's one of those lines that's just delivered for pure exposition, where he's just like, "Oh, by the way, they put those radio buoys on them so that they could track them, and now they get trapped in our nets. Like, just to let you know, they track them because that's relevant to the story."
Yeah, it's really, really stupid.
This guy also takes a page out of Zeke Mitchell's book, and only a few lines later says that their global positioning satellite, parentheses GPS, monitor, interfaced with the onboard computer, allowing them to track the manatee.
Just in case you didn't know.
Oh, thank you for that. I didn't know what fucking global positioning satellite meant.
Yeah.
And as far as like the over-the-top sinister nature of these two, as of now, nameless characters, they are so comically bad.
Yeah.
After they shoot the first manatee, it says, "The bald man picked up some of the manatee flesh off the silver-haired man's shirt and ate it."
Ooh.
The bald man laughed and said, "Manatee sushi, it tastes pretty good." And then he says, "Kind of like bald eagle, but more chewy."
Oh, yeah, because you know he kills bald eagles. Yeah, like, what a...
And it's like, oh, yeah, what a fucking bad guy. He's so bad because he eats bald eagles as well, the American symbol. And it's like, could you try any fucking harder to make this guy seem like a villain?
Yeah.
We get it. He's killing fucking baby manatees with a shotgun and then cutting their heads off with a chainsaw. That's enough.
Yeah. Now, the whole story goes on and on about how these manatee murders are becoming like a national controversy, how there's a media frenzy all over it.
Yeah.
And Doug Shearer, the lead detective, is, he's so frustrated because, like, everyone's hounding on him for, you know, getting the job done and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there was an illusion to me where I was like, look, Yeah, it's a tragedy that someone would go out and kill some manatees, but is it a national? Because there's also a line where, like, they say, oh, Washington's putting the squeeze on him, you know? Like, what do you mean, Washington?
Yeah.
Like, no one, like...
Yeah, it makes the problem of these manatees being killed seem like the most important thing that has ever happened.
Yeah.
When really it's only just surrounding this dumb conflict between boat speeds and manatee habitats.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous thing. And there's also like a power plant that's creating like a water runoff that's hot, you know, and the manatees stay in this area. It's because they like to stay in warmer waters. So they would normally leave the area, but because they are sticking around this hot patch of water from the power plant, they're also around the area more and more and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's such a minor... You would think, like, okay, well, just go and tell the power plant that they can't shoot their runoff into the ocean. This should be so open and shut, and yet, like, it presents it as a problem that just cannot be solved.
Yeah.
These warm waters and the manatees, who can come up with a solution to these problems? The whole town, all these experts, all these scientists.
And speaking of not finding solutions, no one does.
No.
Not Doug Shearer, not the town. Not the manatees?
No. No one can bloody figure out how to solve any of these problems. And it's not even resolved at the end of the book.
No, that's right. Just like several of the others, this book has no fucking ending.
Yeah, it drives you insane. You're like, why write a story and then just not finish? Why? What purpose could you have for doing that?
Yeah.
Just give me the conclusion.
Especially as this isn't one of the weird translation or odd fanfic mishmashes with bullshit writing. This is a decently written book with an actual plot. He has thought about all of these characters, given them all backstories. They all have relationships. They all have connections. They're fucking stupid as hell, but he did make them. He did make them, and there's just no ending. You don't see the ending to the case. It doesn't resolve the courtroom drama.
No, it doesn't resolve anything.
So after our first chapter, the case begins. Doug Shearer, our detective, is introduced, and he is alerted to the fact that they've arrested this man, Buck Williams, who is a local fisherman.
He was literally caught doing the crime with a bloody chainsaw.
Yeah. So he's taken into custody and the case gets started. And the whole time, our main detective is like trying his best to not build this case at all. Everyone keeps coming around and saying like, but could one man do this job alone? What man would kill a manatee?
Yeah.
And what man would kill 3, even including a baby? And every single person who's like got some sense is like, there's probably something more to this than just an asshole guy killing a manatee.
Yeah.
And Doug Shearer, the whole book is just like, but it's an open and shut case. He was caught with the manatee, and he just tries his best to make it as simple as possible.
Because all Doug Shearer wants, the only thing he wants, is to go fishing.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those things where it's like semi-self-insert, where of course he's got every lady in the town going after him.
Oh my god, yeah.
And it's so like, it's so unrealistic to position this man as the local lovebird who just cannot get away from all these women.
Yeah, this guy, every girl in town is after him. He's got a super hot girlfriend. He's got like one of his friend's sisters who's like
just a gold-digging like professional divorcer who literally just straight up tells him more than once in different occasions that she wants like to be rich, and so she marries this realtor before the story begins and then divorces him to get like a nice nest egg. Just a nice nest egg of a couple million, you know, and then she moves back and starts talking to Doug again because she wants that safe boy.
Yeah. And so Doug naturally returns to her even though he's got a girlfriend.
Yes.
And he also fantasizes about getting back together with his prosecutor ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
Who is the defendant for Buck Williams, the guy who killed the manatee. So, as always, we can't escape it. The main character here cheats on his girlfriend and constantly complains about how the girlfriend wants to settle down with him and he's never spending any time with her.
Yeah.
And all he does is say how annoying she is and blow her off. So this guy is a total fucking asshole.
Yeah, a complete asshole. Like, not only does he cheat, but he ignores messages and he lies all the time to these different girls.
Yeah.
And then all they say is like, I just want some commitment, or I want some, and he's like, fuck all that noise. Like,
Yeah.
like literally, all I want to do is go fishing. Like, I ain't got time for chicks.
He literally says, as his girlfriend Mary is trying to get him to show just a little bit of commitment, she says, "To be honest with you, Doug, I'm not feeling good. I've been thinking about our relationship. I don't think it's heading anywhere. Don't you agree?" And it says, Doug thought, "What a question. Sort of like, are you still beating your wife?" What?
What? Yeah, that doesn't make...
And then it says, he correctly thought that Mary's coworkers had been telling her that she needed a new man. Doug liked dating Mary, but was not ready to settle down. He thought for a few seconds and said, "I enjoy your company, Mary. I feel very comfortable around you. I don't know where this relationship is heading. I kind of like where it is." And she says, "I bet you do. You call me whenever you want and come to my house for sex. You have no commitment, but you get the benefits of a relationship." And then it says, "Exactly," thought Doug. What? He's just a fucking asshole.
Yeah, and it drives me crazy because, so you have Mary, his girlfriend, you have Amanda, the jailbait sister. God, it makes me cringe.
Yeah, the scene that she's introduced in is a flashback to when he first met her.
Yeah.
And it literally says in the text, this was his friend's jailbait sister. And she's like, "Well, I'll only be jailbait for another year." And then Doug proceeds to sleep with her.
Yeah, it's so, like, cringy. And he says that in front of her dad.
Yeah.
The whole thing is really weird. And the guy's name is Big Papa. It's like, what the...
Yeah, what is going on here? There's some really Freudian weird shit going on. And that's what almost shocked me the most, is that you find this book and you're like, oh, it's the Manatee murders. And you just think, oh, we have to save those manatees.
Yeah. You think it's going to be an innocent little,
Yeah. He elevates this conflict of just a very specific controversy in nature that is relevant to his hometown. And you're like, this is a wholesome adaptation of this man's thoughts about... No. He inserts himself into the story where he's Mr. Loverboy and he's an asshole to everyone he meets, and he just hates doing his job, and all he wants to do is fuck off and fish.
Yeah, all he wants to do is fuck off and fish, and not only does he want... There's so much boat bragging in this.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning of the story, he gets a new boat, and it's his new thing, and it's all powered up, and it's got sort of an older style hull, and it's not like those damn space shuttles that everyone's boosting around on, and it's like, I'd like to see them space shuttles try to handle a whatever wave out in the ocean. It's like he presents this boat as like the best thing in his life, and like he kicks so much ass, and he's like the coolest guy in town with this boat.
Yeah, he's so proud of it.
And it's like, no, dude, why don't you start focusing on some of the people in your life and stop treating everyone like shit and stop flunking on your work, and you present this as the biggest case of the fucking century, and you just keep blowing it off to go fucking fishing with your friend, like, stop doing it.
Not only that, but there's a weird kind of thing that's not really visited in any sort of deep manner when the boat is introduced. So he's got this boat named Two Tongues, which is named after another boat that was called Two Tongues. But that boat was blown up by a hitman hired by crooked insurance executives. And it says, they were never prosecuted, but Doug had made sure justice was served.
Yeah, and I was like, what, did he go and kill them? Did he kill those guys?
That's what the implication here is that he went and did some sort of underhand assassination revenge ploy.
Yeah.
And it's never revisited, or that doesn't play into his character at all. He's not someone who breaks the law a lot.
No.
It just makes no fucking sense. And what, so he went and killed these assholes because they blew up his boat?
For an insurance thing? I mean, that doesn't make... Why would insurance people go and blow up your property that you have insured? Why? That's the opposite of what you do. The insurance company doesn't want your thing to break so that they don't have to pay you. Why would the insurance company send people to blow up your... That doesn't... Oh my God.
It doesn't make any fucking sense. Yeah.
So, we've got all this lunacy going on about, like, Doug's backstory, and a lot of things don't make any sense. Now, Doug Shearer has a friend called Roger, who's married and is struggling with his weight.
Yes.
There are lots of things in this book that have no payoff. You get bits and pieces out of people's lives, but they don't play into the plot in any way. They don't affect the story in any way. You're just given lots of bullshit. Like, you even get a scene where Roger had done up his bathroom.
Yeah.
It was like a new bathroom or whatever, and it describes the bathroom, and I'm like, is this going to come back in some sort of plot sense? And of course it's not going to, because of course this story isn't that good, where Like, those things are thought out.
Where your B plots, although separate from your A plots, have some relevance to them, like that the relationship dynamics and his cheating and that sort of thing would play in somehow to his detective skills.
Yeah, no.
Literally no. Everything is just its own little side thing, and none of it ties together. The main plot doesn't even tie together properly. It's all just this weird ramble about manatees and some odd courtroom drama shit.
Yeah. So up to chapter 5 or so, you get a lot of backstory on Doug and the original opening of the first murders of the manatees, the first 3 murders.
Yeah.
They arrest this Buck Williams. Now, Buck Williams is caught red-handed, basically, which also doesn't really make any sense because he was on the boat with someone else. And it says that this police boat found them in the middle of the night doing it and then pursued them and caught them.
Yeah.
But the other guy isn't caught. What, did he jump off the boat and go for a swim or something like that? It's just not really explained. But so they catch this Buck Williams and he refuses to talk. Now, Doug has a brief moment where he remembers back to when they were a little bit younger and Buck Williams, his wife dies. Yeah.
Yeah.
This really, really strange scene where Buck Williams, in a grieving madness, climbs into the coffin of his wife and tries to hug it. And everyone is like, oh, oh. But it's why are you climbing into the coffin?
Why?
God damn. Don't climb into the...
Yeah, it's weird.
So you've got all this weird backstory and lots of things that don't make too much sense. And then you get about to chapter 6. And I want to talk about chapter 6 specifically because it might be the worst chapter of any book I've read that isn't a Sword of Mortal or a Depth of Reality.
Can you even call this a chapter? It is literally just a character biography and nothing more.
I mean, it's almost like a trick. It makes you think that it's about to talk about something, and then all you get is just description and exposition and pointless shit. It talks about George Steinworth III, who founds Save Our Sea Cows, and talks about his backstory, about how he saw the ospreys, which are like hawks.
They were making nests in the power poles.
Yeah. And so he talks about the protection efforts to save the ospreys, and you're like, is any of this relevant? And spoiler alert,
It's not.
no. You could condense this whole thing down to saying the Steinworth and Saylor, Steve Saylor, the guy that founds Save Our Speed, right? So the opposing activist group. But it's done in the worst way possible, where it's literally just what you would read in Wikipedia, Steve Saylor founded Save Our Speed in 1999 to try fight the growing manatee regulations. The original manatee regulations in the late 80s had made sense to Steve. Go pick up any book and you'll never see a chapter like that. You'll never see anything in any good book that is written like that because no one wants to read that. No one wants to read pointless exposition backstory about things that barely have any relevance to what we're talking about in the story.
Yeah, like the fact that Save Our Sea Cows sued Save Our Speed for stealing their acronym.
Yeah, and then they had this legal battle, and it's so pointless and so stupid. And I was reading it and I was like, fuck you. Fuck you for making me read this.
There's also so many stupid lines in here. It's going over Steinworth's backstory and why he made the manatee regulations. Just because the boats were disturbing the waters and stuff. And then it says, he thought, all of the political focus groups said voters supported anything that was pro-manatee.
Yeah, it presents the manatee as this uber lovable creature that anything to do with manatees and pro-manatee laws, you get the popular vote. It's like the political cash cow, so to speak, in terms of if you're a politician, just talk about how much you love manatees and you'll get the votes. Don't worry about it. You got them fixed in. It has all these warped sensibilities about what people think about all of these things, and it's like, no, sorry, I think only you think about it that way.
Yeah. There's lines here like, the anti-growth groups weren't able to get building moratoriums passed, but achieved the same result by supporting the warm and huggable manatee that was so popular with politicians and musicians. What fucking musician talks about manatees?
I mean, show me one, show me one. Give me an example. Come on, just make one up.
I'm sorry, John Mills, but the manatee is not a pop culture icon. It's just not.
No. And that may be a sad truth, but they aren't like a political playing piece.
Yeah.
They're not like
Speaking of environmental protection and growth, our main character, Mr. Doug Shearer, has the idea when he's out fishing with one of his buddies who is getting rid of a lot of junk from his divorce. He says, we should dump all that junk It would make a great artificial reef for our fishing hole.
Yeah, the things that you would do, just for more information, to make an artificial reef, you have to have like a large structure or something complicated that corals can grow on. That's why like things like shipwrecks work so well, because you have a large metal frame that is basically ideal for coral growth.
Yeah.
Dumping a sack full of trash, a big sack full of trash, is not the same thing. That is
going to make your fishing hole that much better.
Yeah, that is just blatantly dumping shit in the ocean and is really reprehensible.
Such a fucking asshole.
As a fucking sheriff who spends all his time on the bloody water, you should at least know how illegal that is to do. Come on.
Yeah, and for someone who supposedly cares about manatees, I don't think dumping trash into their environment so that you can fish there isn't exactly the most reasonable compromise.
Yeah, you're not even doing it for the right reasons. Even if you think that like it's going to create an artificial reef, they go out into a spot where they're like, oh yeah, we'll put it here so that we'll have our special fishing spot, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like, you're just punishing yourself. Like, yes, let's dump all this trash in the ocean and fish here so we get all the nasty trash fish, you know? You look at Hard Target, yeah? There's more nature talk about like how, you know, amazing and respectful. The Specialist is so much more in love with nature than Doug Shearer is.
Yeah.
And Doug Shearer, like, really, he just likes sport fishing, you know? And he doesn't give a fuck about animals or Fort Myers, to be honest. He really just wants to go out and do some sport fishing and drink beers. Like, just drink beers, eat Subway, and go fishing. And that's all he wants to do.
And talk shit about women and how annoying going through a divorce is and all this shit.
Yeah.
The Specialist is so much more emotionally resonant with his commentary on nature, and that dude is just like a characterless
shell, of vengeance and darkness.
Yeah, he's just a madman obsessed with revenge, and yet he still has more coming through of his character than this asshole who just wants to drink beer and fish.
Yeah. And then we get to chapter 7, and it does get into a little bit more story, or at least it slowly chugs along.
Just like a manatee.
Yeah, just like a manatee, really. Like, slowly eating the grass off the bottom of the seafloor.
And getting smacked on the back of the head by large boats and yachts.
Yeah, getting fiberglass grazers in their body and things like that.
The stupidest thing about this chapter, though, is it's trying to build up this case a bit more, and Doug is talking to this guy, Big Papa, whose daughter is the jailbait sister who Doug sleeps with. And it tries to start building the case, and Doug Shearer is asking for Big Papa's counsel, as if this man who calls himself Big Papa, who advertises his underage daughter as a desirable female mate, says something about Buck Williams. He's like, he scratched his chin while considering, oh, I know there's no way Buck is in this by himself. He ain't strong enough or smart enough to pull this off. Pull off what? Like, to drive into the river and shoot a manatee? What fucking brains does that take?
That sounds exactly up his alley.
Yeah, he's fucking like a bumpkin.
Yeah, Doug is constantly scratching his head about how, like, this could possibly happen, how anyone could go and kill a manatee, as if this sort of thing doesn't, like, people go and shoot animals for basically no reason.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not a detective. I'm just an idiot who is reading this story. You're a legal expert. I'm speaking now directly to John Mills. You're a legal expert. You've seen strange cases. I'm sure you've seen strange divorce cases. You've seen all sorts of things.
He's probably seen a few manatee murder cases. I mean, this is where he's from.
Yeah, I mean, like, you couldn't make Doug have a few explanations as to why. Because the whole time Doug is just like, beats me.
Yeah.
No one can solve this one. This is an open and shut case.
Yeah, and they give you this idea. They're like, well, he killed those manatees, Buck Williams did, and we don't know why yet. But at the same time, they're like, he's not smart enough to pull this off. But smart enough for what? You don't know why he did it.
Yeah.
As far as Doug can reason, he just did it because he's one of these people who likes to drive his boat really fast.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's too smart to do the crime. You guys are just too dumb to figure it out.
Yeah. So in chapter 7, it slowly starts chugging along. And there is a quick part that I had to bring up in chapter 7. That was Doug goes to the doctor. There's so much bullshit about Doug's like normal life, about the annoying chores he has to do, and Doug goes to the doctor. And he's in the waiting room, and he picks up a copy of Cosmopolitan, and it says he enjoyed reading women's magazines because it educated him on the feminine thought process.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh, here we go. Yeah, here's another quick glimpse into this man's like idea about women, is they're so strange and complicated that he could never understand, so he has to pick up something written by a woman to try and figure out what the fuck a woman is thinking.
Yeah, and this is the same chapter that Amanda, the jailbait sister, is introduced. And I want to read you how she is introduced and how Doug thinks about her, because it is really one of the most bizarre things in this whole story. He's reminiscing about the first time they slept together, and it says, after the first spring break of his roommate's house on Bokila, Doug tried to forget his roommate's gorgeous jailbait sister. Like, he just has no problem identifying the fact that he's into this underage girl. The way she's written about, too, I was getting so nervous that this was going to turn into another weird sexual thing because of the way it starts talking about her. This is still in the flashback. This is while she is still underage. And it says, Doug quickly shut the door and said, what are you doing here? Sandy could come in at any time. Amanda purred. Oh, don't worry about it, choir boy. I talked to his girlfriend earlier this week and I've got it covered. He's staying at her place tonight and I'm staying here, if that's okay with you. When Amanda pulled the sheets off her naked, lubricious body, proudly displayed in the bright light, Doug's throat went dry and his head started to spin. Doug was transfixed by Amanda's shapely body, which was tanned with the color of weathered cypress wood, except for a freckle line above her milky white breasts that defied gravity. The last thing he remembered was locking the door before consuming the apples of his own Garden of Eden.
And it's like, of course, Doug Shearer is so, like, attractive that all these women are always, like, just going to his house and stripping themselves naked and hiding in their bed because, like, they just want him so badly. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Stop using your stories for your fantasy sex stuff, please. I cannot take another one. Like, honestly, every time we pick up a book.
And please, if you want to write a sexual fantasy, write that.
Yeah.
Don't oddly insert it into a story about manatees and boat regulations and this kind of shit, especially when the fucking girl is underage and you identify that she is underage and you make it seem like it's an awesome thing that this character does.
Yeah. But in the present day, she sits him down and they have this really weird thing where Amanda is like soothing him and talking to him and like stroking his back.
Yeah.
And then she says, read the poem you wrote for me back in the day.
Oh, God.
And then you get to read the poem. And the poem is called The Couple. Now, this is presented as the most heartfelt, the most meaningful, like, it makes Amanda cry, it makes her friends cry, it's so, like, emotional, and I'll read it to you because you tell me how this affects you. It's called The Couple. They looked across the water at the setting sun. She admired the fading colors as others had done. She felt secure and enjoyed the blue jay's harmony. She knew tomorrow would be another day of serenity. He saw the small cloud above the red. It was a part of the picture, yet it was dead. The happy colors changed from orange to blue to black. He and the cloud knew what they so painfully lacked. That's it. Like, that, I mean, like, what? I'm sorry, like, you're telling me you picked that up and it moved you to tears? Like, come on, man. Like, come on, man. Like, so Doug Shearer not only is this kick-ass detective, and he writes these poems, and he's like, it moves people to tears because he's just so, like, emotional, and it's like...
He's such a sensitive guy. That's why he cheats on his girlfriend. And...
yeah, and blows off all the women to just go fishing. Like, he's so romantic. Like,
yeah.
At one point, Roger is like, oh, you would have done anything for that girl back in the day. And he's like, yeah, I was whipped, but I like to be whipped, you know? And it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't like to be whipped. You're constantly complaining about being whipped. So why are you now saying that you enjoy that? Stop lying to me. Like,
yeah.
So after that statutory rape, it goes back to the current day, and we get to a little part where Doug is talking to a veterinarian that is doing a necropsy on the beheaded manatees. And now he tells him some shit about the manatees, about how, like, there's corruption in the manatee necropsy thing where these scientists will just say that they were killed by cold stress, even if they were killed by boaters or something like that.
They don't want to disturb the laws and the regulations by the Save Our Sea Cows.
It's like... so stupid, the plot point, that a scientist would, like, be so corrupt and like how much money could you get, for this sort of thing. But anyway, he's talking about the manatees and how about there's corruption in the system and stuff like that. And he's talking about how they don't have enough food because of the power plants, like hot water zone, and they're all sticking there, but there's not enough food. And then he talks about an example, right? This veterinarian talks about an example of how this works. And it's like, we didn't really need an example, let alone 3 that he gives. But he talks about this first example he says, Doug asked, why would they do that? Dr. Johns replied, there's a big controversy about the manatee and all the slow zones. The state's biologists are biased because any manatee death that they can't trace to boat collisions they label as cold stress to avoid any further investigation that might embarrass or hurt their agenda. I'll give you another example. A high number of baby manatees die every year. The state biologists claim that they don't know why, so they label the deaths as cold stress. The truth is that the baby manatees die because they follow their mothers up the river to the manatees' warm water sanctuaries caused by the outflow of the power plants. The problem is that there is not enough food for the manatees. And the example before that was exactly the same thing. So he literally just gives 2 examples that are the same thing. And then the third example is the same. So yes, like the manatees die from starvation or boating accidents, and they're labeled as cold stress. You didn't need to give me 3 examples. You're just repeating yourself and repeating yourself.
Yeah, he just wants to impress you with his deep knowledge of, like, manatee facts from his hometown, and it just slows the shit down so much.
Oh, yes, and I'm reading, and unlike other books where perhaps like in a China Strike, when it goes into exposition, you can see the switch, you can see the change.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I can skip over this part because I already know what San Francisco is, and I can just skip to the part where they're talking again. Now this is way different. It's very hard to tell when it's something that's supposed to be important to the story, or if it's just meaningless exposition about manatee-related things, or speed laws, or Fort Myers bloody trivia. Like, it's so difficult to tell.
Yeah, the only thing I could really easily identify is when it switches into like the author's philosophy sections. Like when he's introducing his girlfriend, the one he cheats on, he says Mary White was a tall brunette with soft tan skin stretched over her thin body. She ate far too many salads and healthy foods for someone with a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And you read that and you're like, what?
Why is salads bad? Like,
so you're saying that people who eat healthy foods
aren't funny?
What? And you just read through a line like that and I'm like, why?
And this book isn't written like from a first person point of view where like that's Doug thinking like, these bloody salad eaters and they're like, they have no sense of humor. That's the narration saying like, oh, this person isn't funny because she's a salad eater, bitch. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm always saying when I'm like, wow, the narration is locked to the character this time in Hard Target. So you can get away with stylistic things in the way he talks and the way he thinks because that's the character. It's not the author.
Yeah.
And this time it is the author. He's introducing another character who he's talking with because he doesn't do any detective work. He just goes around the town asking people what their opinion about the fucking manatee murders are. And he's introducing this guy, Frank, in the narration, and it says Frank was a 7th generation cracker who was raised in a farm in LaBelle. Why did you just identify him as a cracker for me?
Yeah.
What does that mean? It doesn't have any relevance to the story.
And so we continue, as the manatee does, trawling along the bottom, eating the grass. And Detective Shearer talks to the higher-ups. They sort of start giving him a little bit of a squeeze, trying to get him to, like, do something about this case. And now 2 more manatees have been killed. Right? So Buck Williams has gone out on a $300,000 bail.
Yeah.
So someone's paid his bail because he's not very rich. And now 2 more manatees have ended up dead.
Yeah, so it's a very relevant plot point that Doug Shearer continues to think that it was just Buck Williams who did the crime and that there was really no one else involved in it. As far as he's searching, he can't find any other evidence. But he assumes, because he's such a great fucking detective, that Buck Williams killed the manatees, and then he's let out on bail, and 2 more manatees die. And Doug refuses to put him under surveillance the first time because he thinks, he's too stupid to do that again.
Yeah.
And then he still assumes, let's not put him under surveillance because
he won't do it again.
Yeah, and it's like, man, you're the worst detective ever.
Yeah, you're basically letting this guy just run shop on the manatees while you're like, he won't do it again, trust me. He climbed into his wife's coffin, he's not going to do it again.
Yeah, and then, what do you know? He's found with manatee blood on his chainsaw, and it's like, he wouldn't do that again, like, what?
Yeah, trust me, just don't worry, like, he's not going to take the chainsaw out again.
This insane bumpkin man who somehow gets out on $300,000 bail, even though he's really poor, would never kill these manatees again.
So he's obviously being helped by someone, and he's just like, well, he's not going to do it again. And so, anyway, Mr. Foley comes down. And now Mr. Foley tells him that they're going to put in emergency measures for 90 days, where there is going to be additional manatee zones and refuges so that there's way more speed restrictions on the local areas to the point where you can only go like 5 knots or whatever in the zones.
Yeah.
And he says they're bringing down the National Guard to help enforce this with helicopters, and with patrol boats. And of course, Doug, who is an avid boater, is just like, it'll look like a war zone out there with army helicopters and Coast Guard boats running around. I can't believe this. He's mad. He's shouting at all these people, and Mr. Foley says, it is a war zone. Some of your local boaters have attacked our manatees, and we will defend this aggression with all our resources. It's an all-out war. This has escalated to threat level manatee. Like, it's gone out of control. They're shouting at each other over this boardroom, and everyone's like, oh shit, it's the boaters versus the manatee lovers now. And like, the National Guard is in there. They bought their machine guns. They bought their helicopters. They bought their patrol boats. And now Doug he can't go fast on his boat anymore. It's the worst thing to ever happen to anyone for 90 days.
Yeah.
How is Doug going to cope? Oh no. Like,
I don't know. Maybe he could spend those 90 days actually working on the fucking case, because maybe if he solved the case, he could actually reduce some of the boat speed regulations. But no, this dude is just a lazy fucking asshole, and he just is so frustrated by everything that's going on that he has to do his fucking job.
Yeah. And then Roger is there as well, and he's trying to calm everyone down, and Doug says, what is this bullshit, Roger? Settle down, Doug. I'm not happy about it either. It's nothing but a power play. What do you mean it's nothing but... What power play? They're trying to defend fucking manatees because you can't solve the fucking crime. They're just putting... I'm sorry, is that a bad thing to do, to try and, patrol the waters? Obviously, they're killing manatees and they want to catch them, and you're not doing anything to help, so of course they're going to send some extra boats down to help. Not that I think that they would actually send the National Guard down to protect local manatees from attack.
But hey, I'm on their side, man. If anything, I care more about these manatees than all the assholes in this shitty little town.
Yeah. In this world, manatees are way above people. Think about when there's a serial killer on the loose, the Zodiac is out there killing.
Yeah.
They barely bring in National Guard members to help track the Zodiac down, They bring in a lot of, cops to try and solve the case, but they don't,
But Kim, you're forgetting, this is a power play.
Oh, yeah, this is just a power play, right.
And the manatee is a political symbol.
Yeah, it's anything pro-manatee, you'll win the election.
The influence of the manatee on society cannot be understated. And so, of course, it's a power play to side with the manatee. Because when you have the manatee on your side, you have the people on your side.
Yeah, you've got the people on your side. So, they have this kerfuffle, they're bringing in the National Guard, it's getting out of control, but it's just a power play. And you're also introduced to Judge Tyler. Now, Judge Tyler, also a little weird thing, you get this backstory on Judge Tyler that she did this case on someone and it was unhappy, but she went in to get laser eye surgery and the nurse was on the side of the defendant. And so she turns up the laser all the way and burns her eye out.
Yeah, and now she wears an eye patch.
Yeah, a lavender eye patch for whatever reason.
And this is relevant because... Oh, there's another dead manatee on the waters. This one's got a harpoon in its back.
All right, so they have all this bullshit. They kerfuffle a bit more, and we move on.
Yeah, and the whole time, Doug is still trying to close this case as fast as possible. He keeps saying things like, Doug knew it was imperative to connect Buck to this latest killing, or his lawyer would use it to show the real killer was still loose.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe because the real killer is loose.
Yeah.
Why are you trying so hard to pin it on this bumpkin dude when you should be doing real detective work.
Yeah. So they have this fucking bullshit, more girls, more fishing, more girls, more fishing, more drinking, more Big Papa. And then, after 2 more manatees end up killed, Doug Shearer finally decides to do a little bit of detective work, and he jumps on Google.
Yes. The only detective stuff Doug does in this book is go on fucking Google, and he scrolls down the page after a few links of typing in manatee flesh. And there he discovers a recent craze in Japan for manatee brains, okay?
Yes.
Now, the manatee brains are being sold in Japanese clubs for $25,000, and they're charging $1,000 per shot of manatee brain liquid.
Yes.
And supposedly, the manatee brain juice is more potent than Viagra.
Yeah.
And so Doug discovers this, and he assumes, the manatees are being killed and beheaded here so they can sell the brains to Japan.
Yeah.
He literally figures this out by searching it up on Google.
It literally takes him like 5 minutes to do, and you get that at what, like 75% through the book, you get that? And it's just like, come on. This is how you figure it out. You don't stumble upon some genius clue, or you put the squeeze on some guy. Nothing cool happens.
No, he just gets so frustrated by not finding any clues that he just gives up and tries the simplest option, which is to Google it.
It's such a phone-in story plot that I was so like, you can be disappointed in a story, but this one I was like, oh, you cunt. Like, you dickhead. You've written the story with a stupid fucking thing, and then you haven't even given it an interesting resolve.
And not only that, the way this connects to the actual case, who murdered the manatees, who was the bald man in the first chapter who is so sinister that he licks the manatee flesh off the chainsaw and he's like, fuck those baby manatees. Like,
yeah, those manatee lovers, bloody hell. Like.
The big reveal in this story is that George Steinworth, the founder of Save Our Sea Cows, is the one behind the manatee murders.
Yeah, he actually hates manatees.
Yeah, and so the reason he started Save Our Sea Cows was not to protect those stupid manatees. It was to slow down the boats so that he could also go fishing in his fucking canoe. And the boats were going too fast and they would disturb the waters a bit.
Yeah. So he wanted them to slow down, so he made up this bullshit about the manatees to get them to slow down. And the reason that he hates manatees is because when he was riding around in his canoe, a manatee accidentally bumped him off his canoe and he fell into the water. So that's why he goes out and murders 7 manatees and sells their brains to Japan. And that is the biggest piece of bullshit I have ever heard. And not only that, but he does it in the way that he takes a shotgun to the bloody manatee's head and blows their brains out all over the water. How much brain can you get out of a manatee that you shoot in the head? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just absolute bogus bullshit, unthought, totally stupid, completely backwards, unoriginal, uninspiring, unsatisfying, and I am livid. I am livid.
Yeah, and not only that, this guy, George Steinworth, he's not only killing the manatees and selling them to Japan, he's also the one who started the rumor that manatee brain is something worth having and using it is comparable to using Viagra.
Yeah.
He orchestrates this rumor and sends it off to Asian markets so that he can kill these manatees and send them off and get the money for them. And so he tells Buck, this guy who's been taking the pin for the murders, Buck is dying of cancer, and he agrees to take the fall for the manatee murders so that he can get some money and give it to his daughter. It's a virtuous cause, although he's doing it by some sinister means.
Yeah. But there's another stupid thing that happens that I just need to get out, and that Buck Williams dies in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Like halfway through a sentence as he's pointing out that it was actually George Steinworth. He's like pointing it out, and then he just dies in the court, of course, because like that's
courtroom drama.
That's courtroom drama. And he falls over backwards, and not only does he fall back over, he falls over the barrier they have between like the people and the actual people in the courtroom, and he falls over backwards and sends his fucking shoes flying flying into the air. It's like done in like a super comical, like,
Yeah.
whoa, like, whoa. And he dies.
Yeah.
But they can't connect George Steinworth to the Manatee murders. They just can't figure it out. They go to his house, they search it, can't find anything, and then fucking Doug is sitting there like, oh, bloody hell, I can't connect it to George Steinworth. You know, I have no evidence. I have no hard evidence. And then a manatee fucking swims up and nudges the boys.
Yeah.
These little crab fishing boys that George Steinworth has out, like, for fishing crabs near his house.
Like a manatee skull floats up through the water or something, and he sees it.
Yeah, he finds this manatee skull, and he's like, oh, so he's hidden the heads of the manatees in these crab fishing things to use as bait, and then sold the brains off to bloody Japan. And then that's it.
Yeah, so he connects Steinworth to the murders, and he even discovers a way to pin it on him.
And then the story ends.
They don't go catch him.
They don't arrest him.
They don't go back into the courtroom for another silly, guilty, like, no.
Yeah, no. The story just ends. He just, like, finds the manatee head, and then...
The ending is him reflecting on how annoying these girls that are after him are.
Yeah, finally, he's got this ultimatum from Amanda, and Mary also gives him an ultimatum and says, like, oh, like, I'm going to be at this bar tonight, and if you show up, then I'll know that you want to make a commitment and stuff like that, because I want to have kids. And he's deliberating over Mary, Amanda. And then he's just like, yo, Roger, you want to go snook fishing tonight? I ain't got nothing better to do.
The end. He's such a fucking asshole. Oh, you don't have anything better to do. Choosing between two women who you apparently care about, and, you know, you're not getting any younger either, Doug. Or, you know, you could go off and
finish the fucking case. You've got the fucking hard evidence now to put George Steinworth in jail. Like, come on, man. Just don't go out fishing again. Don't blow it all off, and fuck it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Hey, Roger, let's go snook fishing. I bring the beers, you bring the Subway, like...
Oh, my God. So that's the Manatee murders. And,
boy, was it a middle finger to manatees, it was a middle finger to murder mysteries, and it was a middle finger to me. And I think... 3 middle fingers? You don't even have that many on your hand.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, how much shit can you give someone? Now, don't go out and buy Manatee Murders. Save yourself. If you want to learn about Fort Myers, just go on Wikipedia. Yeah. It's a much better read.
If you want to learn about manatees, you know, watch Planet Earth.
Watch Planet Earth, yeah. Now, manatees, I did do a little bit of research on manatees, and they are fantastic creatures. The way they eat is really funny. They have these like snuffleupagus bloody mouths, and they just trawl along the bottom of the thing and just like soak up all the bloody grass.
Yeah.
Like, that's all they do. And
yeah, and I feel like the injustice done to them in the Manatee murders is worse than any boating accident they've been involved in this stupid story.
Yeah, you haven't really given them much, like, love in this story. There's nothing inspiring about the manatees in this book. Now, if I ever in the future see a fictional book about manatees that sticks out to me, I will pick it up and I will bloody read that, because I need another story in my mind that is about manatees.
The manatees need a redemption arc, is what they need.
Yeah, they need to come back. Maybe they'll come back and murder Doug Shearer for his shit effort. Like, I would like to see that sequel. Like,
Hard Target Part 2, starring Manatee.
Now, Brady, what is the next book we're looking at? Because I want to move on, and I want to move on fast. So what is the next thing we're firing into? Because I need to know.
Next week, we're looking at a book called... The book we're going to read is called...
It's called Galactic Redemption 4. It's the 4th entry in the Galactic Redemption saga.
Oh, great. So we're hopping into the middle of a story here with no real bearings on what's happened before. So I'm sure we'll find our way somehow.
Yes, well, it does say in the synopsis that the 4th chapter in the Galactic Redemption saga is a non-stop thrill ride filled with pulse-pounding action, suspense, and surprises that will have you flipping the pages faster than a voracious Zatan erupting from the ground. What's not to love there? And it's got a beautiful cover. It's just a
mountain.
All right, so Lenny Sherman, you've hooked us in for a thrill ride. Let's do it.
Yeah, hopefully you can give us more suspense than these goddamn manatees.
Yeah, well, pretty much anything would be better than that. Gosh. Thank you everyone for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks!